The Psyche in Human Body podcast. For those who are listening, today's guest is Dr. Asha. Dr. Asha is a psychologist. Today, she will be discussing various topics related to psychology and personal growth. In addition, she will be sharing her journey in choosing psychology as a profession and the impact it had on her on understanding herself and others. Dr. Asha today will be emphasizing on the importance of understanding human struggles and the role of childhood memories in shaping our lives. Dr. Asha is a very interesting personality. She's a very interesting human. I hope you enjoy the episode. I hope you enjoy the information presented as much as I did. Please leave all your comments in the section wherever you are listening to this episode, either on Spotify, YouTube, and please support the show by subscribing, following the show, and interacting with us. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the future. All the best. Dr. Asha, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for accepting the invite. I feel very grateful that you accepted the invite and you're here with us today sharing your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. I always love conversations.
All right, so we're going to jump to it. Doctor, can you please just introduce yourself? Who is Dr. Asha and what do you do?
So I'm Asha. I am a psychologist by profession, a clinical psychologist. I'm from South Africa. What I do is sometimes I call myself a magician.
Uh-huh. I like it.
Because I love to create magic in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean, when we feel a sense of magic in our life, we feel there's laughter, there's a sense of aliveness, there's a sense of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the core of what I want to enlighten people about and to ignite that in people.
I see. Before I jump into the details of psychology and how do you do the magic, I need to know, why did you choose this profession in particular? Was it something that you wanted to do as a kid? Or let's say, did life take you in that way, in that direction?
So I didn't choose psychology. I think psychology chose me.
I see.
I started off studying BCom and I started that and I enjoyed it, but I was still a bit curious about just the way our minds think and how people behave.
Mm-hmm.
And at the point that when I started studying psychology, I actually opened up the course curriculum thinking, what else can I study other than BCom?
I see.
And I wasn't really invested into my studies at that point. I was very much a student into my first year doing BCom, not really interested.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to look at the psychology course because it sounded interesting. It had these various modules of psychology, child psychology, adult psychology, psychopathology. And I thought, I could get a bit of everything. And I actually delved into it just thinking, let's see how it goes. And about 7 years later, I didn't look back. It just totally absorbed me. And I delved into it. And I was actually surprised with my own sense of achievement. Because in BCom, as much as I thought I would do well, I naturally just took on psychology and it was like effortless.
Mm-hmm.
So it grew me as an individual in a huge way. I began to understand myself. I began to understand other people around me. And I thought, what more important in life than to try and get that understanding? And I'm still on that journey. It's not that it ends because I'm not the same person I was when I studied almost 19, 20 years ago, if not longer. And I look back and I look at sometimes, the other day I found a journal that I wrote years ago. It was actually for an assignment that I did in psychology. And when I look back and reflected on that, and I look at my life now, I think, oh my word, sometimes we write down things or say things and we actually are pure creators of our destiny in our life and our path. Because very much what I was exploring then at that point, just looking at myself and trying to understand, I see so much that has manifested in who I am today. So psychology for me is such an investment into oneself to really understand how does this human being actually operate.
Yes.
Because that's the core of being a human being.
Speaking of which,
how do human beings operate? Now, a question popped into my mind. What drives our actions? Like, what motivates our actions?
A lot of things, I think, motivates our actions, but the very first thing that comes to mind is your thoughts.
Mhm.
Your thoughts drive your feelings, which drive your behaviors. So it all starts in our thoughts, which is obviously incorporating our conditioning, our values, our the way we've been brought up, because we come into this world as a little baby.
Yes.
And then we're using all our senses to take in from the world. And as we take in from the world, we are creating this algorithm of information.
I see.
And these are all these thoughts and information, and we go on. So our thoughts become all the information, the collective information that we've taken in through all our senses. And of course, there's that intuitive sense that
Yes.
we also have. So I think that drives us. And it's all part of that conditioning, that programming that makes us who we are. And that will guide us in life and all our experiences. Because, I mean, you're not even the same person that you were when you woke up this morning.
Very true.
Because you've taken so much in through your senses already.
Yeah.
And that's changing you. And that's how quickly I feel we change as human beings.
On a daily basis.
Of course. If you meet me and we're having this conversation, there's this possibility that I may trigger something in you, which maybe shifts a perspective of thought or thinking. And you may do the same for me. So in life, we must understand that in every interaction we have with another human being, we are both student and teacher at the same time, regardless of our professions. And we must connect as human to human, because sometimes we can get caught up in these titles. You know, I'm a psychologist, I'm a doctor, you're a trainer, personal trainer. And sometimes that takes us away from that pure human connection, because we are learning from each other. Today's conversation is a beautiful experience of growing and learning together.
Did you practice psychology back in South Africa before you come over here? All right. I'm assuming you did. True.
Yes, I did.
Have you seen like a trend of behavior which is similar over here to South Africa, or in your clinical practice? Let's say it's because of the environment, there are like more type of behaviors that arise compared to a different culture or a different environment. What can you tell me about that?
So that's interesting, because just the other day I had a colleague from South Africa ask me a similar question. She asked me, so what are you seeing in the UAE that's different from South Africa? And what I realize is that at the core of humanity, we suffer human conditions that are very similar. Our struggles deep down, our pains deep down are very similar. Though our conditions surrounding it may be different, our culture, the religion, our environment, but deep down, human struggle is human struggle. And I feel that whether I'm seeing someone in South Africa that has anxiety or depression or trauma, it's none the different from when I see someone in the UAE. And of course, UAE having a huge expat community. I see beyond UAE. I see American, I see German.
Very true. I never thought about that. Very true.
And we are suffering universal struggles. And the cure is in looking at universal truths to heal. Because it's core issues that we have to be looking at. And if we continue to sort of have a separate mindset and a mindset that divides, we lose the oneness of humanity. And this is what I've realized. I see the same trends of struggles and pains and challenges that human beings suffer, whether it's work-life balance, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, and of course relationships. That's a big bulk of my work that I do is relationship work. And, our relationships start right from the beginning with our caregivers, with our parents, with our siblings and our family. They say home is where your story begins.
Yes.
And those relationships filter throughout our lives until we find our life partners, until we have children. It's continuous relationships. And sometimes I feel that, the quality of our relationships will really determine the quality of our life and our well-being, because that plays a very important role. And when I speak relationships, not only personal relationships with other human beings, but also the way we do relationships in terms of our relationship with food, or our relationship with the environment, our relationship with our body, our relationship with our religion or culture or spiritual journey. It's all kind of interlinked and sort of tells us who we are. It's the grandest opportunity to get to know who you really, really are.
So, in a sense, like, why is it that usually things which we go through as children stay embedded in us throughout time? And it's very tough to get out of it. Like, it's very tough to break out of that programming in a sense. And it keeps like a profound sense of either trauma or happiness in us. So why is it that childhood memories are so embedded in us?
It's our memory. We store all of our past experiences in our memory. We have memory of it, and of course our minds naturally want to remember experiences where there's intensity of emotion, more so negative emotion than positive emotion.
Why?
It's I actually don't know why we do that. There must be a scientific reasoning, but we tend to latch onto that because it's a very intense feeling. And of course, it's a chemical response. Everything, all our interactions, all our experiences are chemical responses. I wish that we all kind of knew why we do that, but we do. I think it's just part of being human. We latch onto those intense experiences, and we tend to want to delve more deeper into moments of unhappiness. I mean, how often have you heard people really sit down and inquire into themselves, why am I happy?
Yes.
But if they feel sad or down or anxious or depressed, they delve deeply into
Very
it.
true, very true. Yeah.
And perhaps we need to be playing fair deal here. Let's look at our moments of happiness and also go and delve into a deep inquiry into those moments to balance it. So maybe the answer to your question is perhaps we are just giving far more attention to negative experiences, because that's also a conditioned way and part of our program that, when someone is sad, it's immediately labeled as, it's not okay to be sad, or it's not normal to be crying or being depressed. Let's try and fix it. It's part of our conditioning. So naturally we tend to delve into that more so. But I think that if we begin to look on the other side and say there's so many precious moments in our days, in moments that we experience joy, and if we delve into it just as much as we delve into our pains and traumas, we may begin to shift our experience of life.
Sometimes I feel that humans have this self-destructive tendency in them because they always look and they give a big weight to negative things and they stay attached to them throughout their life, and sometimes it destroys them compared to good moments. I mean, if you look at it in paper, for example, if we list what are we grateful for, there are many things that we can be grateful for, but we just neglect them and we always look to why aren't we better? Why is that? Like, do you think that the environment that we are in, and for example, us looking at successful people or what we are subjectively thinking is successful, and because we cannot reach that, keeps us and gives us this sense of anxiety and depression because we are not there yet? What do you think?
Okay, so firstly, your first part of your comment and your question. So I think people are all knotted up, because if you can imagine a string of cotton, and the thread of cotton is representative of your life, your thread of life. So if you take that piece of cotton and you tie knots in it, so can you imagine a thin piece of cotton with knots? We have those knots in our life that can represent our challenges, our traumas, our moments of pain. But if you're going to go back and constantly try and undo that knot, what's going to happen to that thread of cotton?
It's going to be weak via time because we are trying to always, let's say, itch on it and try to untangle it. So it's going to get weaker in a sense.
Absolutely. And if we try to untangle it too much, it may even break. which may even be representative of the way people feel so broken every time they go back to those traumas, trying to undo it. And there's significance and learning in all those knots. But I think that what I've learned in my own personal approach in therapy is we need to observe these knots. They are relevant, but sometimes digging too deeply into these knots can leave people even more traumatized, even more broken. And they stay in that mode.
Yes.
They go back to it. And yes, I was probably that therapist maybe 15 years ago where I stayed into the past. But I think that now I've also evolved as a therapist, and I've realized that let's look and observe these traumas, but also look at the present moment of where the individual is, but also look ahead at this thread that there probably will be knots. But if people begin to look at those traumas, look at those knots, they will realize that there's been such significant growth and learning from those challenging times. Just like we have little babies that have milestones that they have to achieve.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes think, if we observe a little baby taking their first moments of walking, we applaud them and we clap and we're so proud of this little child. But for a moment I thought, that must be so hard and challenging. And yet the child does it with such courage and strength, and they fall and they get up and they do it, and we applaud, we take pictures. But I think deep down, if we really look at the way a child does things, and we can really learn. And sometimes we can even look at that and say, that's maybe how our life is as an adult. But they just make it easy, but actually it's not easy. It must take a lot for the little toddler to look around their environments and to try and make that first move to balance and to take one foot, put it in front of the other. That's because it's challenging.
Let me bug your head on this idea. Like, do you think that we grow via pain? For example, like if we look at it in nature, if there's an insect or a cocoon, if it stayed too much in the cocoon, it's gonna die. However, it has to go through the pain of being birthed, of like being born, for it to develop or grow. Like I sometimes try to put this perspective in life, because when we are in the current situation of going through a hard time, I myself have, let's say, experienced also some hard time, and I'm sure that everyone have been through that as well. At the moment, I was like extremely anxious. However, crossing that bridge, it changes your perspective completely, and it's somehow you grow. So I asked myself, would I have done it again? And although it was painful, but yes. So it got me to think, do we have to go through pain to develop? What do you think?
So I feel that we are growing all the time. It's the most natural process to grow. However, when we look at those moments of pain and struggle, it's like a growth spurt. And once you go through it and you come through that growth spurt, which is also challenging, there's so much adjustment, there's so much change, there's anxiety, there's fear, there's worry. But if one really looks back at their past, and if I look at myself and I look at all the challenging times, because I'm human, I'm a psychologist, but I'm human, so I do go through challenging times. And those were the most significant lessons.
Very true, yeah.
Significant. I would never turn back and say I wouldn't want to go through that again. And it gives you the skills to awaken as to what we are really here and what are we meant to be learning. And it's a beautiful experience then once you're able to grasp those lessons and not keep on going back to the knots to undo it. Because we cannot undo it. But we can look at the significance and relevance and the uniqueness of our stories and say, how do we move forward? What is our purpose? What is our path? What is our destiny here? Because every experience is an experience where we can also share our story. And the more we share our stories and we have more conversations like this, we realize that is how we raise the real source of empathy and compassion. Because when you are sharing your stories, that is when someone can start feeling, I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's me too. I've also been through that. Or it may not be all like exactly the same, but the core pain and the struggle is there.
Like we're on the same boat in a sense. So when you can relate to someone who've been through a similar problem, let's say, you can be like, oh, this eases my pain.
Yes.
Because there's someone I can talk to and we can share this moment together and carry the weight of this moment together. Let's say I'm someone who came to your clinic now and I'm going through some troubles. How would you diagnose me? What do you need to know about me, for example, to help me get through it as Dr. Asha?
So, of course, I would look at your whole life. Just as I would like to first meet you where you are in the moment. The very first part of therapy is making sure that we resonate. The fit is very important in therapy. I think it's the single best predictor of success in therapy is the relationship between the therapist and the client.
Yeah.
So the way I'll do it is, of course, I will get a background information. I'll see where the patient is in the moment, in the version of who they are and where they would like to start. Keeping in mind that I'm thinking about that thread and where they're wanting to go back to. So often, almost 95% of my patients, it's not the first time they're seeing a therapist. And that's something that we need to look into because usually majority of my patients have probably been through 4 or 5 therapists already.
I see.
So when I begin with that pattern. So you've been to therapy, you've tried other sources of healing, and yet most patients are generally experiencing the same kind of pattern. So my work will really look at pattern recognition, helping people to recognize what are their repetitive patterns, because what you'll find is we are going around in circles.
Yeah.
And the same 5,000 thoughts we may have had yesterday is the same that we are having today. And if we're not able to shift that, we're going to stay in this kind of cycle. So it's about helping the patient look through a different lens at their situation, their circumstances, trying to shift their perspective, trying to understand themselves far deeper, looking at what I would say the top 3 emotions in therapy that I have found that needs to be worked on is fear, shame, and guilt.
And they're all kind of negative because we always attach to them.
It's negative, but I think it's we can look at it from 2 sides of the coin.
True.
You know, I wouldn't want to label it as negative or positive, but experiences that I feel, you know, when I see someone that comes up with a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, of course we can talk about these terms, but who is this individual beyond, firstly, all their labels, all their diagnoses? Who am I working with at the core?
Yeah.
So I like to sort of say, fine, we've got all of these labels. Like, for example, you spoke about success and achievement early on. You know, we need to understand that the more we try and attach ourselves to all of these roles and labels, most people lose themselves in all of that.
Yes.
And then they come to therapy questioning quite deep existential questions and also wanting to understand the basic core of just being human. So it's pattern recognition, looking at the repetitive patterns in our thoughts, in our feelings, in our behaviors, trying to assess in my patient, you know, what is their target door here and what is their trap door? Because in therapy, I work in a way that how am I making contact with my patient? Because some patients I need to make contact with their feeling. Maybe their thoughts are an area where they need to be worked on. Maybe they're not thinking very clearly or their thoughts are irrational. So every patient is very different. So my contact door, my target door, and my trap door is very different for each patient, depending on their personality, depending on their patterns, depending on how they make decisions. There's so many variables. And my work is to try and identify, okay, where's my contact with this patient? Where's my target? What do I need to activate?
Where is the middle ground where I can, let's say, connect with them in a sense?
Yes. And where is their trapdoor? Are they trapped in their feelings? Are they trapped in their thoughts? Are they trapped in their behavior patterns, their action? And once we identify that, it's looking at the whole script. You know, we live with so many scripts of please all, try hard,
Yes.
not good enough, be good, don't be messages. You know, so it's there's a whole script analysis that takes place, which is beautiful for myself and for the client once they start understanding the way they operate on a daily basis. Once they start recognizing that I'm doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting something different, a new result. Now that's what you call insanity.
You know, like when you look at it, like nowadays, when we open the internet on social media, for example, no matter who you are, like there's always a comment that you are not enough. In a sense, if you have a curly hair, you should have straight hair. If you're fat, you should be thin. If you're thin, you should be overweight. If you're this, you should be that. Like, I think that this constant drive where the society is being driven that they are never enough makes them feel that, why am I never enough? Like everything that I do, when I go to the internet, which is, let's say, the virtual society, everyone is telling me that I'm not enough.
Yes.
So maybe like being content with ourselves, like we should start with self-discovery and being content. Like how can we detach from all this noise around us? Like how can we try to put a filter and take only what we need? Like what do you think? How can we guide people through this process of getting out of this loop of you are never enough? Like how can I tell someone that you are enough, no matter who you are perfect, and just live?
So it doesn't come from the outside. It's from within. So as much as we're looking at social media and looking on the outside, they are using that platform. But whether someone is liking or not liking something on social media, the more important thing is we're doing it in our minds already.
Yes.
In our everyday functioning, we're saying, I like this, I don't like this. And what's important, what you said now, is what is very important, even in therapy, is obviously we can speak and share things with many people, and we feel comfortable talking to so many people, but the most important conversation is that internal dialogue that you're having 24/7. So if you feel I'm not enough,
Yes.
you're going to look at the outside world and think that they all feel the same way. It's going to be like, because we are mirroring each other all the time. So the work has to go inward, and that needs to shift. The how, I think that so many people would love the step 1, step 2, step 3 mode of
guidance.
This is what I often get. What are the tools? How do I do this? Step 1, step 2, step 3. If we look at our lives at the moment, we are in the information age. And being in this information age, we have all the information at the click of the button.
Yes.
So with all the information, with all the self-help books around, with social media that's giving us so much mental health guidance, we need to stop and pause and ask, why are people still struggling at the level that we are struggling at? And because the how is not that simple. And I think that when we are, what people say, working on ourselves, I like to rather say, let's create ourselves. And it requires, in fact, quite a dedicated, committed process to that healing. And there's no shortcuts about it. So when one commits to that journey with complete faith, spontaneous trust, you will understand that transformation then happens. But it does require that level of discipline, commitment. It's almost like you're becoming a disciple of yourself, a follower of yourself to such a with such focus in this creation of who you are, because we are working in every other aspect. Then I have people that come and say, I want to work on myself, and I say to them, let's not work, let's create here, because we are living in a society that's highly reactive. If you notice, there's lots of people that are quick to react.
Yes.
And the more we are in a reactive mode, it's due to chronic stress. We are suffering chronic stress. But the more we are reactive, it takes away from our creative potential.
How so?
Because when you are reactive, think about what's happening to our nervous system.
I don't know what happens. Like fast emotions come right away.
If you
Like,
look at our...
It's always anxious. It's always on alert mode.
Yes, we're hypervigilant. This is the chronic stress that I'm talking about. We are not activating a parasympathetic relaxation mode. We are highly strung. We are, because of our busy minds, our minds are so busy that there's no creativity that can flow from a busy mind.
Speaking of which, like I read once that all, let's say, the great painters and artists via time, when they created their, let's say, best work, they went through boring phase of their life where they do nothing. This is where creation comes. This is where creativity comes, when you do nothing. But like nowadays, if we're not doing something, you feel like, oh, I'm missing out. I need to do something. I need to listen to a podcast. I need to read a book. I need to see the latest news. I need to always be up to date.
That's always that doing mode. I have to be doing something. In fact, when people are not doing something, they don't feel productive. And also not feeling productive, they feel anxiety for not doing something.
True.
So, like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. There's this new norm of a heightened stress response, and we are normalizing it further. So our relaxation normal state is sitting at a very high level of stress. We suffer nervous system disorders more than anything else. So that's why the whole movement towards what we call meditation, mindfulness, consciousness is on the rise, and it's very much needed. Because if you look at the word reactive, when we are reactive, we can't see clearly. We lack clarity. And if you just take the word reactive and you take the C out of the word and just put it at the beginning, the word changes. Creative. So start from the beginning. Begin to see clearly. Pause. Still the mind. And watch what happens.
I like that. Like, taking life easy. Like, don't be a fast reactor. Like, if you listen to some news, take a breath and just then think about it and act. I have a question now, and it pops up into two directions. So, part one, why is it that our relationships with family are so deep? For example, why do we always need to please our parents as children? And if we don't please them, somehow we feel this kind of guilt. This is part one. Let's talk about this first, then I'm going to jump to part two.
So naturally, I think that it's a dynamic. We have parent and child come together. The child comes through the mom's womb. I think that what happens there is even beyond our knowing. It's such a connection from when the baby is just in the womb, in utero, coming into this world. As we come into this world, while we are in utero, we are taking without guilt. We are just taking in whatever we need from mom. As we are born and coming out into this wide world, we realize that we can't always have what we are needing or wanting. Maybe mom is not able to always give at that moment. That is when the dynamic, where a little infant realizes that I can't always get what I want in the very first moment, and that dance then begins to develop. The main thing is the word expectation. Parenting is a journey where when they say there's no book, there is certainly no book. And it really goes right back to when an adult decides to have a child, it's an opportunity for them to even reparent themselves. But it's a beautiful relationship that can evolve, but it can also go completely what word can I use? It can go in ways that causes trauma, causes discomfort, causes a lot of pain, because the differentiation process don't happen, the reparenting, there's trauma, there's things that we haven't dealt with ourselves, and then we have expectations of our child, and most parents would want to live through their own lives through their children.
Yes.
Of course, there's not a short answer for this, because there's culture, there's the way we've been brought up, there's conditioning of what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad and how kids should be raised. And every human being just wants to be free. So here we have a child that is growing up in a home, but there's expectations of a child to be in a certain way, and they need to please, because there's maybe a need for the parent to maintain a certain image or a standard of living. So it's societal pressures and standards, as well as personal standards of oneself in a parent, which is then, of course, imposed on a child.
I see.
And it's not just the parents. Remember, the child also goes into other systems. We have the education system.
They get exposed to other, let's say, external environment in a sense.
Absolutely, which all has an influence. And the child itself is taking in information. The child is naturally innocent, spontaneous, explorative, and curious. How beautiful if we could just let that be.
Yeah.
But we are conditioned to always teach. If you notice, you'll see a child. If an adult sees a child, they always feel the need to teach the child something. And what we realize is that we take away that spontaneity and that curiosity and that innocence. Sometimes just allow. Of course, the why questions come so beautiful. If adults could ask more why questions, I think that we will discover so much about ourselves.
Now, this is part one. I'm going to ask part two.
But what I also wanted to say about that please all, I didn't get to it. Please all is just also a script. So it's also related to our personality type. Some personality types are more prone to the please all script. So there's various, reasons why we get to that script of please all.
The script of please all, is it in our nature, or do we get it via the environment? Like, for example, if we have twins, do they both have this sense of pleasing, or might one of them be affected by external environment?
Nature
versus nature, yes.
Nature versus nurture. So it's a blend of two. I don't think that even, I'm not sure on the twin studies that have been done, but even in a home where you have 3-4 children raised by the same parents, they are completely different. So, of course, there's new research that even comes out and talks about genetics and epigenetics. Genetics playing 5% role in our conditions and our chronic conditions, when 95% is more epigenetics. How are we relating to our outside variables? So that is interesting. But so I don't think two children are alike.
I think maybe also because they get exposed even to a different environment. Like even at school, they might be exposed to different friends, different experiences, which wire their brains differently.
That's it. Absolutely. We are all unique. And we need to remind ourselves of that uniqueness. But there's a lot of comparison, competitiveness, jealousy, and judgment that plays up.
Jealousy, that's an important thing that I want to talk about. But I want to also now ask the second part of my question. Like, I got why we have this sense of pleasing the parents. In a sense, because we are attached to them since childhood, we were growing in the womb of the mother and such. Now, let's take that to personal relationships. For example, two partners. Why do we also have this sense of pleasing them in a sense? And they can create such a profound sense of feeling on her or him, although they are not attached, let's say, naturally somehow. Like, how is it that this bridge of emotions get built up, although they were not sharing the same blood, in a sense.
So when it comes to relationships of two people coming together, again, we have a modus operandi of how we do it. We have this image of someone that we want to be with and connect with. And what happens, I find, is that you have two human beings that want to be in a relationship, but you have two human beings with this image. This image of what they would like in a person, that becomes the relationship, two images. And what we don't realize is that those images are constantly changing.
I see.
So can you imagine trying to build a foundation of relationship if one has this idea of what I need this person to do this or do that or to please me? And of course, this is the way we understand we are in relationships because we want to get something out of it. This is what the mindset of many people are. But it's an important aspect to say, what can I put into a relationship rather than what can I get out of a relationship? But we live in a world where it's always been about making a deal. We are in a deal-making mindset in society. So it's a lot of relationships that I see and work with is like a business transaction.
Yes, yes.
So the mindset, the perspective needs to shift to begin with, because we need people to couple more consciously. Because if people consciously couple, if they find themselves at a time where they need to uncouple, they can also consciously uncouple and avoid all the traumas that we experience when people separate or break up or divorce, or because there's a lot of trauma that happens in those kind of process. Because to begin with, the coupling was not consciously done, because people don't stop and really pause and say, what is it that I really want in a relationship?
Yeah.
Because it becomes about these images. Again, it goes back to develop the complete self. So here we have a circle. Let's imagine there's two rings.
All right.
And so, of course, symbols of marriage is rings. But if you're going to be half and you're expecting your partner to complete you, sometimes we hear this phrase that this person's going to complete me, or this circumstance complete. If only I have someone that loves me, or I meet someone, I'll feel complete. Or we're always looking for something to feel complete.
Yeah.
So we are depending on that person to complete us. But the most important thing I would say is develop your true complete self. And from that point, you share your completeness with another human being that can also feel complete, and you touch. And if you look at that symbol, it becomes almost an infinity symbol.
I see.
But you feel complete. And it's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like sometimes when I share this to people, I think it's crazy because I'm meant to be in a relationship and this person is meant to please me or meet my needs. But the reality is our needs are increasing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
As human beings, we are needing more and more and more and more. And as long as we continue to look outside ourselves to have these needs met, we will struggle.
Now, I'm sorry, doctor, you were saying?
Yeah, sorry. It's about becoming an expression of happiness rather than an extraction of happiness. So that completeness is beautiful once you begin to find it within yourself.
So now what I got from you is that, first of all, we have to, in a sense, feel complete with ourselves. Like, love ourselves, in a sense. Now, as you mentioned, like, let's say the number one reason why people usually, first of all, why do people need a companion?
Because a companion is beautiful to help us grow, to evolve, and to share joys. And to, even when I say our complete self, it's accepting your pluses and minuses of who you are in that version. Completeness doesn't mean that you are free and it involves a process of saying, this is who I am, with all of who I am. My challenges, my my pains, my joys. And it's when you are having a companion, it's beautiful because you learn from each other, you grow from each other. If you can find an individual that you can meet with that kind of completeness, you experience the ultimate freedom to be, to see, to feel, freedom to feel, freedom to be, freedom to see, freedom to achieve, freedom to love. Because ultimately, we want to feel free as human beings. And when we're not competing, we're needing someone else to complete us, it becomes enmeshed. And very often we need to then abandon a part of ourselves to accommodate a partner or a circumstance, but it comes at a cost. And that cost is the struggle that I see in my therapy sessions. There's a part of themselves that they've had to let go of or they've abandoned, which is that sense of, I want to be free to
be myself.
Yes. I love what you say there, to be yourself, because for me, that's the ultimate. If you are able to say to your partner, when I'm with you, I feel I'm all alone. And I'll explain that, because when you are feeling, what are you like when you're all alone by yourself?
I have this sense of peace that there is no one else in the world but me, usually. Like when I sit sometimes at night with myself, I have this sense of peace and I honestly don't care in sense what's happening out there.
And also I think you have that sense of peace, but when you are by yourself completely, you are also your completely natural self.
Yes.
When you are in your home by yourself, whether you are singing or dancing or sitting alone or crying, or you are your complete natural authentic self. And if you can be with someone in that same mode and say that, it's the most amazing experience, because it takes away all that we are speaking about, the need to please, the need to accommodate someone, the need to abandon a part of ourselves, because we just are ourselves. So when you say to your partner, when I'm with you, I feel like I'm totally alone, it may sound like the most ridiculous thing that you can say to your partner, but from the way I'm explaining it, it's the most beautiful, because you're saying that can be my most natural, authentic self.
Without the feeling of judgment that I might get from the outside world.
Yes. But imagine me saying that to someone and they were like, because sometimes when I've said this to some of my patients, they were like, I can't say that to my partner. But when I explain it, they're like, oh, wow, that would be beautiful if I could just be that. Because we lose ourselves in all the doing, in all the need to please, that little chips that we take away, we're chipping at ourselves. And sometimes, we just need to be honest. So many couples that I see would start off and they'll say, we have communication problems. We are communicating, even in our silence, we communicate. So is it really about communication problems, or is it really about honesty? To really say what you really are thinking and feeling, but it's very hard.
Because we have this sense of fear of maybe they would not like it in a sense.
Yes.
And maybe we have then to change, or because we need to please in a sense, because we don't want to lose them also.
Absolutely. That brings me to the point where I feel love and fear are the two main feelings and emotions. And I feel everything between those feelings are just derivatives of those two main feelings.
Beautiful.
The one sponsors the other, and the other sponsors. So love sponsors fear, and fear sponsors love. Oh, I met someone and I love you, and I feel so adored by you, but the fear comes in. Oh my word, will I be able to hang on to this love? Or will this person love me the same way? That's fear. And if the person does love me the same way, oh, will I be able to keep up and maintain the relationship? So it's constantly the sponsoring of one and the other. It's the two emotions that play up. Fear is very much rooted in our ego, and love is in our pure spirit.
Like they drive our actions in a relationship in a sense. On one side, we don't want to lose the relationship. And on one side, we want to feel loved and we want to feel this sense of beauty in life.
Yes, yes, yes. And if you can just understand this sponsoring of love and
Yeah.
fear, just a pure understanding and even question it. I would say to the audience, question everything I say. There's no right to wrong. Everybody has their own viewpoint. But pause and think about it. Because in life, you just want to live a life where you feel like you're doing it with ease. If you are struggling in your life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's any aspect of your life, stop and pause and say, what is it that I'm doing that I'm struggling?
Mm.
Because we are taking instructions from ourselves on how we can operate in our life. No one else is telling us what to do because human beings are doing exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
No one's allowing anybody else to tell them. They are pushing back. They are doing their thing. And we all are doing what we want to do. But it's about how we are doing it.
You know, something crossed my mind now. Like you told me that most of the people that come to you who are, let's say, in a relationship, they want to satisfy this need or they want to satisfy this ego of, let's say, seeing something or expecting something from the other partner to fulfill in them. And it got me thinking, like, are we so egocentric because we are choosing to be in a relationship not because we love truly someone or we care for them, but we want them to reflect on us. So it got me thinking, like, is there anything that, because love, I think, for example, dogs, they love us only because they love us more than themselves. So it got me thinking, like, then humans aren't the same. When we are in a relationship, it's because we want to satisfy ourselves. That's why we want to be in a relationship. Not because we truly love that other person more than ourselves. What do you think?
I think I agree with you on that statement that we are doing relationships more from the egocentric level, and a union between two people is a beautiful union of, it's, I would say, spiritual.
Mm.
And when I say spiritual, I mean a union of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, spiritual means possibility, that innate possibility of creation of something so beautiful. It's so sacred.
Yeah.
And that's love. But I'm yet to find someone that can give me a clear understanding of love in the 20 years that I've been talking to people. Because we can easily say, I love this person, that's why I'm with this person, but there's a war zone happening in their home. So what is then true love? Are we really, you speak about care. Affection is deep, deep care for an individual.
Mm.
Attention is giving that person deep, deep listening. Do we have time in our days to even listen?
Yeah.
That's a big question. And are we really offering deep, deep care? But if the minute we go, what can I get out? How is this person on the outside going to fulfill me or meet my needs? We're already in our egos. It becomes I, my, me, mine. That's the language that happens. And it's what we I.
Yeah.
Me. Of course you are important. Sometimes I say that the most important aspect in a relationship is to be self-centered.
Mm.
But I'll tell you what I mean by self-centered, because self-centered, if I ask you now, what does self-centered mean? How are you going to?
I'm going to answer by putting my needs first, where ideally, let's say, I think for the common person would understand that if I have to choose between two ultimatum, I would take the one that benefits me, no matter how it affects the other person, because I care about myself.
Absolutely. So sometimes when I say the word self-centered, people would think, oh, but that sounds selfish, that sounds so self-absorbed, so egocentric. But again, my understanding of self-centeredness, so the one that you just described, is more rooted in our egos, but the self-centeredness that is required in relationships is like this: the ability to understand that you need to focus on yourself. in order to feel centered, to feel at peace, to feel content, and from that place engage with another human being.
I see. Just like how you mentioned that to fulfill ourselves, in a sense, complete the
Yes.
circle.
Yes.
Only then we can reflect the beauty in us to the other one.
I mean, can you imagine that self-centeredness of an individual when you're feeling, I'm focusing on myself? What will give me joy? What will give me an expression of happiness and joy in my life? Because believe me, everybody wants to be around happiness. So if you are an expression of happiness, you're not going to have any problem with having people around you with lots of love because we're attracted to that. But the mere happiness starts with a smile, with laughter. But the problem is that we are taking life so dead serious that we are losing our sense of just pure joy. Even smiles are no longer something that is offered spontaneously. It's sometimes in the mornings when I get into my elevator, I've been doing an observation study for the past 8 months, and I've asked myself, I'm going to start taking note how many people would greet, say good morning, or look at somebody. And I think in the past 8 months, I've had about maybe 5 people say good morning or even make eye contact.
That's such a low number.
Absolutely. And because people are, their heads are down, they are on their devices. They're walking with their devices, whether it's 5 o'clock in the morning that I'm going for my walk, or whether it's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock when I leave for work, or when I come home from work. It's the same pattern.
Yeah.
And it's how beautiful if we could just make eye contact more, smile at someone, even say good morning.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes if that happens, it's becoming so foreign that we go into a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
Like someone said, hello, did you say something? Like it's like a stress response.
Yeah.
So we need to stop and pause. It's just something that I decided to do mindfully. And I've actually been shocked at what I've found.
Weird times. Like, I think that we are so detached from our true selves, of what makes us humans. I think this integration with technology is taking us out of who we truly are. And this is like one of the main causes why we feel empty somehow. Because we are just not adapt to it.
Yes. So this is very interesting because obviously the big trend now is AI. I think human beings are artificially intelligent. We are all artificially intelligent already because most people are living a life of pretentiousness, a lot of masking happening, which means it's artificial. We have artificial connections. Some of us living in artificial environments. We're looking for artificial attention, whether it's through social media. So there's a lot of artificial that's happening. I think we're quite intelligent in that way. And I recently coined this concept called awe intelligence because we need to become in awe of who we really are. So awe is an emotion that is incredible, and psychology hasn't really given enough attention to it. It's the one emotion that can help an individual shift a perspective of a circumstance or of a person. So awe is usually experienced when we are in nature, when we meet someone that we really are inspired by, when we are seeing someone that, like even music can give us, or art, just experiences that stop us in our track, sometimes gives us goosebumps. But it's such a powerful, powerful emotion that I thought if we can actually become in awe of who we are as human beings and understand that we have an intelligence that is so innate that I think most of us know nothing about. If we begin to just understand that, and it's a concept that's evolving for me, because as I coined this concept, it's every day I'm adding to it because I see moments of pause in therapy, right? So sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone and they will pause and they will say, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's true. You know, that moment where you're like, that's true. That's a shift of perspective. that's a moment of awe for me. And even if it's a cup of coffee, and I love my cappuccinos, and when I'm feeling for one and I take that first sip, it's like, if you see a blissful baby being born, our natural, we even say, oh, we haven't been taught to say that, but it's just the sound of it, know. And then I looked more into myself, and as I came up with this concept, very spontaneously, in fact, and I said, so who is Asha? What do I really want to ignite in people? Authenticity. And as I said the word, I paused and I said, authenticity. There's an awe within the word authenticity. And what else am I all about? I'm about having organic conversations, just like the one I'm having with you now. And organic doesn't start with AWE, but it has the sound. Because every interaction we are having with people is completely organic. Whether I meet someone in the elevator or at a store or a friend, we haven't tapped into a conversation that we've programmed as to what we're going to be saying. Maybe the first start of it is, hello, how are you? It's very programmed. But beyond that, it's completely organic. And that is what we need. I can't plan a therapy session for next week. I'm not sure who I'm going to be meeting next week.
Yeah, because as we said in the beginning of the conversation, that we constantly change.
Absolutely. And most often, I will see a patient and they will be presenting with a circumstance, and by the week later that I see them, they have something else that they want to speak about. And what they have found is sometimes that even the circumstance that brought them to therapy is not as relevant than what a week later has brought to therapy. Of course, it's all in mesh and we go back and forth, but it's showing me that we have to be authentic. We can have these ideas and plans in our minds, but I feel that I will lose my patient if I have to have a step 1, step 2, step 3 approach in how I'm going to be helping or guiding someone. So it requires a very integrative, holistic approach, and that is the way I work, and I have to be thinking integratively all the time. What's happening in the mind, but what's happening in the body, and what's happening in the soul.
Yeah.
See?
The way I see it, it could be like a way of fixing the root cause of the emptiness that we feel. Like this simplicity of just being authentic, as you mentioned, and connecting to our, let's say, roots of being human. Like to the smallest extent of living in a squared home, not an environment. Like I imagine sometimes, like imagine if we put a dog or a cat in a home, they would feel depressed by a time because it's not their true place. I think that this is also why humans also go through that, because they are being taken out of context of what makes them human, whether it comes to what they interact with, from technology to being at home, to all the noise, to this sense of being perfect all the time. That's even another thing. Like the society nowadays does not reward you if you are not perfect.
Yes.
And this sense of we always want to be perfect also puts a lot of pressure on us.
Yes. The be perfectizing with the please all, with the try hard, with the good enough. It's like a cluster that comes together. But we can shift from that. We can, if it's not working for us, if it's working for you, if you are doing the be perfect and try hard script and you are happy and you are joyful, please go ahead and continue. But if you are looking at your life and you're saying, I'm struggling, you have to stop and pause and say, what do I want to do differently? And when it comes to AI, I'm so grateful for ChatGPT and all this lovely technology, and I'll tell you why. Because the more a computer or a machine or a robot that can do for humans what we don't have to do, maybe it gives us the possibility and the time to be more human.
focus on ourselves a bit more.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that's the way we need to look at it. It's a grand opportunity to say, let's embrace the innate intelligence of this human being that we are, and let's see what we can create. But
Yeah.
a lot of people are fearing this AI
Yeah.
and forgetting that sense of innate creativity and potential that each human being has, that is completely unique.
Yeah.
And how there's pure beauty in it. Pure beauty.
Doctor, I have a closing tradition, and I usually ask all my guests when they come, are you happy in life? You yourself. Are you happy?
I absolutely am happy. With my pluses and my minuses, with my challenges and my joys. Because there's one very important question that I would like to ask myself as I am an old woman one day. I would like to ask myself, how well have I loved? And we love in many different ways, by our words, by our actions, by our thoughts. And when I say love, how have I loved? I say that because I am love, a source energy of love. And I would love my answer to be, I've loved well. And I would like to challenge everybody to love well, because it's a beautiful journey. Because when we speak about happiness, happiness means not that everything is going well in your life and that you're succeeding and that you are grasping every opportunity. Happiness is that complete understanding of life, understanding that there's going to be challenges and accepting that and finding freedom from all our struggles as well. And having that innate faith and trust in oneself. So
Lovely. I love it. Doctor, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in today. I very do much appreciate your time. I wish you nothing but happiness for you and your family and all the best in the future. And I would love to have you again in the future if you're available. That's it. Thank you so much.
pleasure.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Pleasure.